I am 80 years old now, and the most painful realization of my life didn't come from failure. It came from success. That may not make sense yet. It didn't make sense to me either. Not until it was already too late to change anything that mattered. I sit here most mornings with a cup of coffee that's grown cold, staring out a window I once rushed past. And there's a question that keeps returning, quieter each time, but heavier than the last. How did I live so long and miss so much of my own life? I used to believe that if I worked hard enough, stayed disciplined enough, proved myself enough, life would eventually slow down and reward me with peace. I told myself presence could wait, love could wait, joy could wait. I was wrong. But that truth didn't arrive all at once. It crept in slowly, disguised as responsibility, ambition, and praise. When I was young, people admired my focus. Teachers called me driven. Family members said I had a good head on my shoulders. Employers trusted me. Friends described me as dependable. Every compliment pointed me in the same direction. Forward, always forward. No one warned me that a life lived entirely forward leaves no room to stand still. I grew up believing that achievement was safety, that if I could build something solid enough, nothing important would fall apart. My parents worked hard and worried harder. I absorbed their anxiety without realizing it. Stability became my religion. I learned early that love was conditional, not spoken aloud but implied. Be productive, be useful, be impressive. Then you earn rest. So I chased it. Degrees, promotions, titles, goals stacked on goals. Every milestone felt like a doorway, and behind every doorway was another hallway, longer than the last. I told myself, just get through this phase, just this project, just this year, just this next level. I promised myself I'd slow down later. Later became my favorite word. Later is a comforting word when you're young. It feels infinite. It feels patient. It feels kind. Later lies. I missed birthdays without noticing, conversations without listening, moments where someone needed me fully, not efficiently. I was present physically, but my mind was always somewhere ahead, rehearsing the future. I called that planning. I called it responsibility. I called it maturity. What it really was absence. I didn't see it then because the world rewarded my behavior. Achievement brings applause. Sacrifice brings respect. Exhaustion gets mistaken for importance. No one pulls you aside to ask what it's costing you. And even if they did, I wouldn't have listened. I believed the story I was telling myself too deeply, that one day when everything was finally secure, I would exhale. That day never came. Instead, the years stacked up quietly. Decades passed without ceremony. I became very good at postponing my own life. I postponed rest. I postponed connection. I postponed grief. I postponed joy. And the strangest part is that nothing felt wrong while it was happening. That's what makes this kind of loss so dangerous. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't scream. It whispers. You don't wake up one morning and realize you've missed your life. You wake up tired, then busy, then older. And one day someone you love looks at you with a distance you don't remember earning. I remember the first time I felt it. A subtle moment. Someone close to me was speaking, sharing something fragile. And I caught myself thinking about an email I needed to send. I nodded. I said the right words, but I wasn't there. That was the pattern. Always available, rarely present. I told myself I was doing all of this for the people I loved. But the truth is harder to admit. I was doing it because achievement gave me certainty, And presence requires courage. Presence asks you to feel things you can't control. Ambition gave me an excuse to stay armoured. Years later, when the quiet started getting louder, I didn't understand it. I had everything I was supposed to want: respect, stability, a life that looked impressive on paper. And yet, something essential felt missing, not broken. Missing. Like a room in a house I never entered. I tried to ignore it at first, threw myself into more goals, more structure, more distraction, but you can't outrun time forever. It waits patiently, and it collects interest. I didn't know it then, but the bill was already being written, and it would come due all at once. There is a strange comfort in believing you are almost there, almost finished, almost secure, almost free. That belief carried me for years. Whenever something felt heavy, whenever a quiet dissatisfaction tried to surface, I pushed it away with the same promise: just a little longer. I told myself patience was virtue. I told myself discipline was strength. But what I was really practicing was delay. My life became a series of waiting rooms, each one carefully furnished with goals and obligations. I sat in them willingly, convinced the real life would begin after my name was called, after the next promotion, after the next milestone, after things finally settled down. They never did. Every time I reached a goal, relief arrived briefly, like a shallow breath, and then disappeared. Almost immediately, a new expectation replaced it, a higher standard, a new responsibility, a heavier weight, and because I was capable, because I didn't complain, the weight kept coming. People rely on those who never pause. I told myself this was what adults did. You endure, you push through, you delay pleasure until everything is handled. But life doesn't work like a checklist. It doesn't wait politely in the margins while you finish proving yourself. It keeps happening. I missed that. I missed it because nothing forced me to stop. There was no single disaster, no dramatic collapse, just a long, quiet erosion of moments I thought I would revisit someday. Relationships don't break all at once. They thin, they stretch, they grow quiet. You don't notice the absence until it's complete. I remember evenings when I came home exhausted, carrying the day like a burden I didn't know how to set down. Someone would ask how I was and I'd answer automatically, fine, busy, tired. Then I'd disappear into routines, emails, papers, plans for tomorrow. I told myself I was being responsible. What I was really doing was choosing numbness. Being present requires energy, and I was spending all of mine on outcomes. Years passed like this. I became efficient at avoiding stillness. Silence felt uncomfortable. When things slowed down, my mind rushed to fill the space. Stillness has a way of asking questions you don't want to answer. So I stayed busy. And then, one day, the waiting ended. Not because I reached the finish line, but because life interrupted me. The call came on an ordinary day, the kind of day you don't mark. I almost didn't answer it. I was in the middle of something important. That irony still hurts. The words on the other end were simple, calm, final. Someone I loved was gone. No warning, no preparation, no later. Gone now. I remember standing there afterward, unsure what to do with my hands, with my breath, with the time that suddenly opened up in front of me, raw and unfamiliar. Time felt different immediately, heavier, sharper. I realized with a kind of shock that the future I kept postponing had collapsed into the present. There was no more later. And in that moment something broke open inside me, not loudly, quietly. I saw my life from a distance for the first time. The years, the patterns, the choices I made automatically without ever questioning their cost. I saw how often I chose productivity over presence, control over connection, safety over sincerity. I saw the moments I traded away without realizing they were irreplaceable. Grief has a way of clarifying things ambition never could. I replayed memories differently now. Conversations I half listened to, invitations I postponed, days I rushed through as if they were obstacles instead of experiences. I realized I had treated life like something that would begin once everything else was settled. But life doesn't begin later. It only ever happens now. That understanding arrived too late to undo what was lost, but it arrived clearly. I understood then that my greatest regret wasn't a specific mistake. It wasn't a wrong turn or a single decision, it was a habit. The habit of waiting. Waiting to feel safe before being honest. Waiting to feel successful before being present. Waiting to feel ready before living. Readiness is a myth we tell ourselves to avoid risk. And presence is a risk, because when you are fully present, you feel everything. The joy, the fear, the uncertainty, the grief. Achievement offered me insulation. Presence offered exposure. I chose insulation. And now, in the quiet that follows loss, insulation feels like isolation. I don't blame my younger self. He did what he thought was right, what he was praised for, what the world rewarded. But I wish he had questioned the story earlier. I wish he had asked why waiting felt safer than living. Loss doesn't just take people. It takes illusions, and the illusion I lost that day was the belief that time would always cooperate with my plans. It doesn't. It moves on, whether you are ready or not, and it leaves you with exactly what you invested attention in. I invested in achievement and neglected presence. That is the truth I carry now, and the weight of it has changed how I see everything. I live differently now, not because I suddenly became wise or brave or enlightened, but because time finally removed the illusion that I was in control. When you reach this age, you stop imagining who you might become. You start reckoning with who you actually were. There is a clarity that comes with the end of options. I wake up slower. I move slower. And in that slowness, I notice things I trained myself to ignore for decades. The sound of morning, the weight of memory, the faces that appear uninvited in my mind. Some bring warmth, others bring regret. I don't try to outrun them anymore. I sit with them. That's something I never did when it mattered. I used to believe reflection was indulgent, unproductive, dangerous even. I feared that if I slowed down enough to feel, I would lose momentum. What I didn't understand was that momentum was carrying me away from myself. There are things I cannot repair now, conversations that will never happen, apologies that arrived too late, love that went unspoken because I assumed it was understood. Assumptions are another quiet thief. You assume people know how you feel. You assume there will be time to explain. You assume presence can be postponed. And then the opportunity closes. Not dramatically, permanently. I am not haunted by dramatic failures. I am haunted by ordinary days, the days I treated as disposable, because those were the days life was actually happening. I see younger people now, moving the way I once did, focused, driven, always leaning forward, their eyes filled with plans instead of people. I don't judge them. I recognize them. They believe what I believed. That sacrifice today guarantees peace tomorrow, that once they arrive, they will finally exhale. Arrival is another myth. There is no final version of your life waiting for you at the end of effort. There is only the life you are living right now, whether you are present for it or not. I wish someone had told me that earlier. Or maybe they did, and I was too busy to listen. Regret has taught me something ambition never could. Urgency. Not the frantic kind, the honest kind. The kind that whispers, "This moment matters more than you think." At this age, I no longer chase outcomes. I pay attention to moments, because moments are all that remain when outcomes fade. I have learned that love requires participation, not provision. That being there matters more than building something impressive. That the people you postpone are the people you miss most when the room grows quiet. If I could speak to my younger self, I wouldn't tell him to quit striving. I wouldn't tell him to abandon responsibility. I would tell him to interrupt it, to pause in the middle of becoming and ask, what am I trading away right now? I would tell him that no achievement will ever hold your hand at the end of the day, that no title will sit beside you in silence, that no amount of success will make up for absence. But I can't speak to him. I can only speak to you. And maybe that's why I'm here. If you are listening to this and telling yourself, this doesn't apply to me yet, that's exactly when it applies most. If you believe you'll be present later, love later, live later, listen closely. Later is not promised, and presence is not automatic. It is a choice you make repeatedly, often inconveniently, often imperfectly. You don't become present by accident. You become present by deciding that nothing you're chasing is more important than what is in front of you. That decision feels risky when you're young. It feels irresponsible. It feels like weakness. It isn't. It's courage. Courage to feel before you are ready. Courage to connect without guarantees. Courage to stop hiding behind productivity. I spent my life earning permission to rest. You don't need permission. You don't need to prove your worth before you live. I learned that too late. But you don't have to. So I want to ask you something, not rhetorically, honestly. Who are you postponing? What moment are you treating as insignificant because it doesn't advance your plans? What conversation keeps getting delayed because it feels uncomfortable or inconvenient? What part of your life are you waiting to deserve? These questions don't disappear. They wait patiently. And one day, they demand answers. When that day comes, time will no longer be on your side. Mine isn't. I can't undo the years I spent elsewhere while life passed quietly by. But I can name the mistake clearly. I mistook achievement for meaning. I mistook busyness for importance. I mistook waiting for wisdom. Don't make my mistake. Be here. Not perfectly, not constantly, but deliberately. Because one day you will slow down whether you choose to or not, and what you find waiting for you will be shaped entirely by where you placed your attention. When the noise fades, when the striving ends, when the future collapses into memory, what will you have been present for? That is the question I leave you with, and I hope for your sake you answer it sooner than I did.